Tonight, history made right here in this room. Apollo 11 mission control in Houston as America celebrates that milestone 50 years later this week. Also, the other news this Monday night, the firestorm over President Trump's racially charged tweets. The president doubling down on his attacks against 4 congresswomen after telling them to go back to the countries they came from. The congresswomen before the cameras just moments ago. The state of emergency tonight after Barry slams into the U.S. Tonight on the move, several states on alert. Blinding rain and dangerous flooding, the water rescues, the human chain rescuing swimmers. Rob has the new track. News on Jeffrey Epstein tonight facing 2 of his accusers in court. And prosecutors now describing what they allegedly found inside his safe. A major break tonight in the case of the American mother, a U.S. scientist killed in Greece, thrown into a bunker, what they've now revealed. The surveillance, a security guard pulling his gun on a black sheriff's deputy in full uniform. The major blackout in New York City, stranding people on subways and in elevators. And now the new warning tonight, there could be another. Breaking developments coming in now in the desperate search tonight for a missing mother vanishing with her dog. And one small step, Apollo 11 and the history made 50 years ago this week, setting foot on the moon. And tonight, for the first time, we broadcast from inside the room, from Apollo Mission Control in Houston.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, reporting tonight from Houston.
Good evening from Houston tonight and from the room where history was made. This is Apollo 11 Mission Control 50 years ago this week. That moment that changed the course of history, of course, the walk on the moon. Mission Control has been restored here in Houston. It finished just a couple of weeks ago, right down to the consoles behind me, the flight plans, the ashtrays, the coffee mugs left right here in their place. Tonight, you'll see rare images, the emergency, moments before that moon landing, the decisions made right here in this room. And we're going to give you a tour of what's been left behind here. It is extraordinary. But we do begin tonight with the president and the growing firestorm after tweeting, telling 4 Democratic congresswomen to go back to their own countries. The president doubling down today. And a short time ago, those congresswomen coming before the cameras to answer the president. ABC's senior White House correspondent Cecilia Vega leads us off tonight from the White House.
President Trump today ramped up his attacks against 4 Democratic congresswomen after his racist tweets ignited a firestorm.
They hate our country. They hate it, I think, with a passion.
The president saying the congresswomen, all women of color, originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe. Adding, why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? But all 4 congresswomen are American citizens, 3 born in the United States in Cincinnati, Detroit, New York City. Only Representative Ilhan Omar was born outside the U.S. She came when she was 12 years old as a refugee from Somalia. Today, the president denied his tweets were racist.
As far as I'm concerned, if you hate our country, if you're not happy here, you can leave. That's what I said in a tweet, which I guess some people think is controversial. A lot of people love it, by the way. A lot of people love it.
Among those who love it, white supremacists. One prominent website today saying this is the kind of white nationalism we elected him for.
Does it concern you that many people saw that tweet as racist and that white nationalist groups are finding common cause with you on that point?
It doesn't concern me because many people agree with me.
Tonight, the 4 congresswomen at the center of the controversy showing a united front.
This is the agenda of white nationalists. Whether it is happening in chat rooms or it's happening on national TV, and now it's reached the White House garden.
Sadly, this is not the first, nor will it be the last time we hear disgusting, bigoted language from the president. We know this is who he is.
We don't leave the things that we love. And when we love this country, what that means is that we propose the solutions to fix it.
President Trump has a history of race baiting. He spent years championing the false birther conspiracy theory that President Obama was actually born in Kenya. He launched his presidential campaign calling Mexicans rapists, and there was this response to those neo-Nazi protests in Charlottesville 2 years ago.
You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
So far, only a handful of Republicans coming forward to denounce the president's tweets. The party's only African-American senator, Tim Scott, calling them unacceptable personal attacks and racially offensive language. But most of the president's colleagues trying to dodge the controversy altogether.
I hadn't read that, but I'll go check it out.
And Cecilia Vega with us live tonight at the White House. And Cecilia, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is now promising tonight that the House will soon vote to condemn the president for these tweets.
That's right. She is now calling for a resolution to denounce what she calls the president's, quote, disgraceful and xenophobic language. And she is now calling on Republicans to also join in that vote. The speaker today said that the president's slogan, Make America Great Again, David, has always been about making America white again.
Cecilia Vega leading us off tonight. Cecilia, thank you. And now to the state of emergency after Hurricane Barry slamming into the U.S. and still on the move tonight. Torrential rain and flash flood watches in several states all the way up to Illinois. Meteorologist Rob Marciano was in the storm zone with the rescues and where this hits next.
Barry slamming into the Louisiana coast as a Cat 1 hurricane, packing wind strong enough to rip off roofs.
And call 911!
And force daring helicopter rescues of the stranded. Tonight, remnants of Barry now dumping tremendous rains across a wide swath of the heartland.
Take a look at this water. 2 days after Hurricane Barry made landfall, this lake is still angry. Waves crashing against this seawall. Now the cleanup begins.
Tonight, as crews race to restore power in Louisiana, the flood threat is rising in other areas.
Yeah, but you can't even see the road down there. Look at that.
And the impacts of Barry turning deadly on Florida's beaches Sunday.
There's going to be multiple subjects in the water.
Panama City beachgoers forming a human chain to help swimmers caught in a strong rip current. One person was killed. First responders saying the calls were coming in nonstop.
David, that flood threat, that rip current risk will diminish, but the flood threat will not. Here it is on the radar scope. A lot of rain with this, another 4 to 5 inches on top on what has already fallen, and some of this will get scooped up into the northeast midweek. David?
Rob Marciano has been following this for days. Rob, thank you. Next tonight here, accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein coming face to face with 2 of his alleged victims in court today, telling the judge that Epstein remains a threat and should not be allowed out on bail. And what prosecutors said they found in his safe. Tom Yamas was in the courtroom.
Surrounded by their lawyers and a crush of cameras, 2 of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers went to court to try to make sure he doesn't get bail. Courtney Wild telling the judge Epstein is, quote, a scary person to have walking the streets.
If you're a victim of sexual abuse, your voice should be heard, period.
Annie Farmer told the judge she was 16 when she met Epstein in New York. He then paid for her to travel to New Mexico, where he allegedly sexually assaulted her on his sprawling estate called Zorro Ranch. The multimillionaire has been charged with sex trafficking of minors.
This was as commercial a sex trafficking operation as you can imagine.
He pleaded not guilty, hoping for bail. But today his argument that he's not a flight risk took a hit when prosecutors say during the raid of his mansion, they discovered inside of a locked safe, quote, piles of cash, dozens of diamonds, and an expired foreign passport with Epstein's picture, but a different name and a stated residence in Saudi Arabia.
And David, the judge said he looked into 12 cases involving a range of crimes against minors, and the defendants in each case were denied bail. When the defense said in court Epstein had not committed a sexual crime in 15 years and that he's not, quote, an out-of-control rapist, the judge fired back. How do you know? That judge will decide this Thursday if Epstein gets bail. David?
Tom Yamas with us tonight. Tom, thank you. And next this evening to Ohio, where a white security guard was caught on surveillance pulling his gun on a black sheriff's deputy. The guard stopping the veteran deputy at an IRS office in Toledo, saying he could not come in with his weapon. The deputy, who was on duty and in uniform, said he would leave, but the security guard kept his gun aimed at the deputy's back. An attorney for the deputy saying his client believes it was racially motivated. The security guard pleaded not guilty to an aggravated menacing charge. Overseas tonight, a major break in the murder of an American mother and scientist in Greece. Authorities now telling ABC News they have a suspect in custody and that he has now confessed to killing Suzanne Eaton on the island of Crete. She vanished going for a run earlier this month. Her body was found dumped deep in a cave used as a World War II bunker. We turn now to history made 50 years ago this week, right here in this room. This is Apollo 11 Mission Control in Houston, where they watched, where they guided those astronauts who would land on the moon. We have teamed up tonight with our partners at National Geographic for an extraordinary look back, for a tour of this room. Rare images, many have not been seen in years. Take a look. It was 50 years ago this week. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, the Apollo 11 astronauts, suiting up as America waited. Would they do it? Would they set foot on the moon?
America's team of astronauts was increased to 16 today. With the addition of 9 new members, it was specified that they will be trained for trips to the moon.
A grand new goal, first set by President John F. Kennedy.
Now it is time to take longer strides. Time for a great new American enterprise. Time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
The zero-gravity training.
Astronauts preparing for America's first lunar mission follow a complex training program.
The simulations, walking in their spacesuits, the tests in the water. Americans had so many questions about the mission.
This is for Mr. Armstrong. There's been speculation about what the first man on the moon will say when he gets there. Will you prepare something ahead of time, or will it be prepared for you, or can we expect a spontaneous exclamation?
Attention during the training period and up till now has been focused on how to do the job and how to do it best, and not so much with what might be the emotions of the moment. I think that would be impossible to predict.
And then it was time. 50 years ago, tomorrow morning, families across the country gathered in their living rooms, hundreds of millions watching all over the world.
The estimate is more than 1 million persons are in the immediate area.
Gathering along highways, beaches, setting up tents, children wearing space helmets, ready for launch in Florida.
We're down to 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. We should see fire. 4, 3, 2, 1. Ready to
9:32 a.m., Apollo 11 lifting off.
I can see her rising now as she's going up.
The control room watching, some with binoculars. The view spectacular, and even more so from inside. After traveling 240,000 miles in 76 hours, Apollo 11 enters into a lunar orbit. The next day, the lunar module Eagle, with Armstrong and Aldrin inside, separates from the command module where Collins remained. Hours later, the Eagle begins its descent to the moon, and it did not come without alarm.
Program alarm. 1202. 1202.
A 1202 alarm means the lunar module's computer is overloaded. If the problem cannot be corrected, the landing will be aborted.
Give us a reading on the 1202 program alarm.
The control room silent, but they soon decide it's a go.
We're going that fly. We're going that alarm.
Neil Armstrong flies the lunar module manually, evading boulders in their planned landing location. With their fuel running critically low, Flight Director Gene Kranz, back in Mission Control in Houston, gives a 60 seconds to abort warning. They make quick calculations at NASA.
Okay, looks like a good area here. I got the shadow up there. And the 30. Forward. 30 seconds. Good. 40 feet down, 2.5. Contact light. Stop that. Okay, engine stop. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
breathing again in mission control. They break into applause in Houston, some wiping away tears. The images beamed back live. The control room sees it.
And we're getting a picture on the TV.
Cheers back on Earth, back in America. And then Neil Armstrong emerges.
I'm going to step off the limb now.
July 20th, 10:56 p.m., Neil Armstrong walks on the moon. And those famous words.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
19 minutes later, it was Buzz Aldrin's turn. Back home, tears and a little girl waving her American flag. Back at Apollo Mission Control in Houston, they knew they had a lot of work still left to do.
Yes. These are the chairs they sat in.
Yes.
And the consoles they sat in.
Yes.
And here in Houston, they show us where they have restored Apollo Mission Control. The consoles, the screens, the Apollo program on the monitors. Even the cigarettes and coffee mugs are right where they were left. And Sandra Tetley, who helped lead the project, takes us to the console where Flight Director Gene Kranz sat.
He gave the, requested the go, no go, gave the go to the Capcom, and they landed, and he was here.
And she shows us something else here in a room that now preserves all of that history made. She takes us to the console where the flight surgeon sat, the doctors. On the screen, a heartbeat.
They had Neil Armstrong's vital signs right in front of them the entire time.
Absolutely.
And Buzz.
Right.
And Mr. Collins.
Right.
They were monitoring the astronauts, their vitals, at every moment. And as they guided them from this room on that journey home, a message they left on the moon.
Underneath it says, "Dear men from the planet Earth, first step foot upon the moon, July 1969, AD. It came in peace for all mankind."
Wow, there is so much more from the archives, and every moment is really fascinating. And you can watch the full film, Apollo Missions to the Moon, at natgeotv.com. We're going to turn next tonight. New concerns after that major blackout in New York City. The utility company Con Ed blaming an equipment failure for the power outage, paralyzing more than 30 blocks of Manhattan. There are new concerns tonight, with temperatures in the city expected to soar well into the 90s this week, adding pressure to the power grid and raising concerns of another potential blackout in the days ahead. And of course, we'll stay on this. New developments in the search for that missing mother in California's Eastern Sierras tonight. Cheryl Powell and her dog vanishing from a campsite while her husband moved their Jeep. Authorities finding her late today alive. Our cameras there when family and friends got the news. Her family now says tonight she'd been chased by a man with a knife. Finally tonight from Houston, America Strong. NASA giving us an extraordinary opportunity today to broadcast right here from Apollo Mission Control. You can see over my shoulder here the American flag, the video of Neil Armstrong as it came in 50 years ago. The consoles have all been restored. In fact, you can see the flight plans here just where they were left, the ashtrays, the telephones. So much history right here in this room. We thought we would look back tonight at some of the things you might not remember. As America held its breath in those final moments before landing, and then as Neil Armstrong descended down that ladder, at the White House, President Richard Nixon and his speechwriter quietly prepared a speech if Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were stranded on the moon. The president, in one of his lines, would tell the nation their brave astronauts would stay on the moon to rest in peace. But instead, Americans in Mission Control heard this.
Okay, I'll put the president right on.
All right. Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House.
Neil Armstrong's wife, Jan.
What kind of plans do you have for Neil when he gets back? Quiet outing or what?
We haven't made any plans yet. They have to get back.
The Armstrongs had lost their daughter at just 2 to cancer, and it was said through the years that Neil Armstrong might have left a bracelet on the moon for her. Armstrong's sister, in an interview decades later, was asked if that was true, answering, "Oh, I dearly hope so." And that famous American flag, all of the flags from the Apollo missions are still standing, except the one from Apollo 11. Buzz Aldrin saying he saw it topple in the rocket blast as they left, leaving their footprints on the moon and their place in history. You know, Neil Armstrong said one small step, but we all know it was much bigger than that. We honor the astronauts and the workers here at NASA who made it happen.